Hi, this is Randy with Sophos Tutor, and I just want to say a quick thank you for clicking on this video. Also, if you haven't already, please click subscribe to Sophos Tutor, as it really helps out with the channel. Thanks.
As I said, for today, we are going to be tackling SAT writing. And the writing section focuses on grammar and writing style, where essentially you will be acting as if you are an editor that is reviewing an article or essay to be published. So you are going to be reading a passage and judging whether certain underlined portions are correct or whether they need to be replaced with an alternative. And I think the difficulty with SAT writing, and again, I'm assuming with most students, I'm assuming that you are a native English speaker. If you're not a native English speaker, I imagine you'll have different challenges. But if you are a native speaker, the most challenging part about SAT writing is, number one, writing can sometimes use different rules than we would use speaking. So while trying to sound things out in your head can work for many questions in SAT writing, they don't always work, because good SAT writing does not necessarily follow how we speak. So keep that in mind. The second thing that's challenging about the section is that there are lots of questions that you can typically answer fairly quickly. Again, assuming that you are a native speaker of English, that you can probably point out very easily. But the SAT also intersperses those questions, and typically they are grammar questions, with writing style questions, which require a lot more setup and thought. And trying to tackle a long question after doing several short questions can be discombobulating. It can feel like you are wasting time because you've already set yourself with this expectation that all writing questions should be answered within 20 seconds. And if this takes 30 or 40 or 50 seconds, that you might run out of time. And there is something a little bit scary about the timing of SAT writing. We take a look at the top here. We see that we have 35 minutes to answer 44 questions. So that means you're going to get less than a minute a question to answer. And when you have to read a passage, that prospect can feel really scary. So it's important to keep in mind that it's actually normal that you will be taking sometimes 45, the entire minute, maybe a little bit longer for these writing style type of questions. And you can trust that you can answer the grammar questions quickly enough that you will end up having enough time answering the longer questions. So I'm going to tackle the first 11 questions of this test. It should give you a good sample of the type of questions you'll face in the section. With that being said, let's go ahead and get started. Now, I do start reading from the very beginning because there will probably be some questions that will ask about the passage as a whole. And so it's good to know what the passage is about. Technically, you could go directly into the first question, but I find that a little bit too hard for my brain to kind of jump into. So I will start reading from the beginning, but you don't really have to read all that closely, right? You can just read at a fairly casual pace, relatively speaking. But you do want to be brisk about it, and we don't want to obsess over certain sections if you feel like you don't understand a word. Just go ahead and move on and trust that you're going to know enough. All right, let's go ahead and get started. So this passage here, way to go. Greek yogurt, a strained form of cultured yogurt, has grown enormously in popularity in the United States since it was first introduced in the country in the late 1980s. From 2011 to 2012 alone, sales of Greek yogurt in the US increased by 50%. The resulting increase in Greek yogurt production has forced those involved in the business to address the detrimental effects that the yogurt making process may be having on the environment. Fortunately, farmers and others in the Greek yogurt business have found many methods of controlling and eliminating most environmental threats. Given the solutions, as well as many of the health benefits of the food, the advantages of Greek yogurt outdo the potential drawbacks of its production. So now we run to question number 1. And I do a couple of things. Number 1, I first actually listen instinctually whether this sentence sounded good in the first place. Okay? And my instinct here is when I hear outdo, it feels a little weird. I mean, to outdo drawbacks doesn't quite feel right. So I might not be ready to eliminate it, but I would probably say that there might be something better. So what I will do is create what's called a soft no. A soft no is where I am leaning toward no. I'm anticipating there will be a better answer choice, but I'm also open-minded to the fact that maybe I have misread this answer choice, or it could very well be the best choice here. Okay? And I'll signify that by just doing like a slash outside of a letter. Now, if this was a hard no, and I think this is absolutely impossible to be correct, I would just move that slash. Well, you can't move the slash when you're writing, but I would write a slash directly across the letter. But this is a soft no, so I'm going to go ahead and put the slash on the outside. Okay. Now we're going to go ahead and just plug in the next word. Advantages of Greek yogurt defeat the potential drawbacks? Definitely not defeat, right? This is a hard no. So I'll put a cross on that letter here. The advantages of Greek yogurt outperform potential drawbacks? Well, outperform usually, you're talking about two things that are trying to do the same thing. This feels like a hard no. Okay. The advantages of Greek yogurt outweigh the potential drawbacks. This does sound like a proper usage. I'll go ahead and circle D there. Okay? So this question is what we call a vocab in context question. You see actually something similar in the reading section. This is vocabulary, but of course, we have to consider the context of the sentence that is being plugged in. And I just recommend this strategy just like we did in the SAT reading section for vocab and context, where you simply just plug in the choices and you read them and you just go with the one that sounds the most appropriate. So that's question number 1. Okay. All right, moving on. The main environmental problem caused by the production of Greek yogurt is the creation of acid whey as a byproduct. Because it requires up to 4 times more milk to make than conventional yogurt does, Greek yogurt produces large amounts of acid whey, which is difficult to dispose of. To address the problem of disposal, farmers have found a number of uses for acid whey. They can add it to livestock feed as a protein supplement, and people can make it their own Greek-style yogurt at home by straining regular yogurt. That's a mouthful. Going number 2. Which choice provides the most relevant detail? Already, my spider senses are going up because the SAT now has presented us with a question. Now, if the SAT had not presented us with a question, I would assume that this would be a grammar question, in which case I am expected to already know the rules and what would be appropriate. But if the SAT feels like it's important to ask a question, then it means that I need to be very open to how the SAT wants me to judge these answer choices. So I want to pay extra special attention to these words in the question, in this case, most relevant detail. So this is a question involving writing style. So immediately, the first question that comes up is, what denotes a relevant detail, and what makes it the most relevant? Now, if you recall in my discussions in other SAT videos, that the SAT very much thinks in terms of objective black and white situations. Yeah, you could think about details being more relevant and less relevant on a spectrum, but in reality, 3 of these choices are just going to be unviable, period, regardless of what the other choices are. And there's really only going to be one choice that truly fits the passage. But then going back, what makes a sentence or detail relevant? There is an overriding rule when it comes to SAT writing style, and it's this. Every sentence needs to build off an idea from the previous sentence. Okay? That rule applies to every sentence in this passage. Okay? Other than the first sentence of the passage, which of course you have to start with, every sentence after that has to build immediately off an idea of a previous sentence. So the principle of sentences building off of ideas from previous sentences applies to every single sentence after the first, and this includes topic sentences. Now, it may seem that a topic sentence would have more liberties at going on its own because it is the header of a new paragraph, which in and of itself groups a certain chapter, I guess, or a group of related ideas. But even if we look at the topic sentence here, which says that kind of the main idea of this next paragraph will be about the main environmental problems caused by the production of Greek yogurt, it's still building off of the idea from the previous sentence about the potential drawbacks of Greek yogurt's production. Even topic sentences have the obligation of building from at least a piece or fragment from a previous sentence. Okay. So what are the obligations of the underlined portion in this sentence 4 that question 2 is asking about? Okay. Well, we first look at the part that's not underlined in the sentence. It talks about that they can add it to livestock feed as a protein. So we expect something maybe related to this. Right? But we would also want to look at the previous sentence and see how that provides a foundation for this new sentence. So if we go back to sentence 3, it says, to address the problem of disposal, farmers have found a number of uses for acid whey. So in our mind, we need to expect that the next sentence should accomplish that goal, which is to name those number of uses for acid whey. So if we keep the detail that's already there, and people can make their own Greek-style yogurt at home by straining regular yogurt, does this sentence name a number of uses for acid whey? Well, we have one use of acid whey, added to livestock feed as a protein. Do we have another use for acid whey? We do not. So, because we don't, this is a hard no. Okay, so I'm going to say that again. Notice how we used the previous sentence to essentially create the guidelines for finding what underlined portion is appropriate. Okay, and that's really important when it comes to writing style questions. Looking at the previous sentence and how it will give you the rules and the guidelines for which should come after. Let's go on to B. Protein supplement and convert it into a gas to use as fuel in electricity production. Okay. Okay. Is this another use of acid way? I think so, right? Because one is added to livestock feed as a protein supplement, and the other use is to convert it into a gas to use as fuel in electricity production. Again, I might have misread it a bit, but I think this is good. I'm not ready to circle it, so I'm going to give this a soft yes. I denote soft yeses with check marks. Okay. Let's move on. C. Protein supplement. While sweet whey is more desirable, like already, this does not sound like another use for acid whey. So it's definitely not C. D. Supplement, which provides an important element of their diet. Again, this is not another use of acid whey, so we don't have a number of uses. This is simply a commentary on the one use that's mentioned in the sentence. So I don't think it's D. So what choice provides the most relevant detail? B does, because it now allows this sentence to describe the number of uses for acid whey. Okay. All right. Moving on, number 3. Okay. If it is improperly introduced into the environment, acid whey runoff can pollute waterways, depleting the oxygen content of streams and rivers as it decomposes. Okay. So I look at this and I ask if this feels right. Now I look at the wording. It says can pollute waterways. We want to be really adept at identifying parts of speech. In this case, I can see that we have verbs here. If we have verbs that are underlined, and you can, by the way, peek at the other answer choices, and you see that all the other choices have verbs in them as well, then that means this is likely a verb conjugation question, primarily. And we're going to need to find subjects, number 1. And we're going to need to find other verbs to see if the tenses of these verbs are going to match. Okay. So what can pollute waterways? Acid whey runoff. Right? There's our intro. Acid whey runoff can pollute waterways. Okay. Does the can match runoff? Yes, it does. That seems to work. Pollute waterways, that seems to work too. So kind of giving this a soft yes here. Okay. Does can match the subject runoff? Yes. So acid whey runoff can pollute waterways. That sounds like a good sentence. So I'm going to give this a soft yes here. Okay. If I look at B, I want to know how is it different from A. Well, what's different is that we have an apostrophe S. And I know apostrophe S turns this noun, right, waterways is a noun, into waterwayses, which is a possessive adjective. But there's nothing that that adjective is modifying, so this is definitely wrong. C. Could have polluted waterways. Okay, acid whey runoff could have polluted waterways. Now that sentence sounds good, but knowing how could is used, this type of tense is used when you're talking about a hypothetical, right? So I would expect that after you say that acid whey runoff could have polluted waterways, you would then describe how acid whey runoff didn't pollute waterways. But it says depleting the oxygen content of streams and rivers, so clearly it still did, so could have is not appropriate. Lastly, we have has polluted waterways is. We've already said waterways is wrong, so it doesn't matter about the verb. That's wrong too. So we get A. Okay. So you see how I use a little bit of comparison and understanding differences to make these really quick judgments. In a lot of ways, I'm not judging the entire answer choice. I'm simply judging the slight change in the answer choice and seeing if that slight change makes a better choice or whether it makes the choice worse. As soon as I find that it's worse, I can eliminate the entire answer choice. Okay. Let's continue reading. Yogurt manufacturers, food scientists, and government officials are also working together to develop additional solutions for reusing whey. Immediately I see a semicolon. My spider senses are going off. Semicolons are used to separate independent clauses. So we can essentially think of semicolons like periods. If you can use a semicolon in SAT, then you can use a period there. And clearly, we cannot put a period after scientists. Yogurt manufacturers, food scientists, that is not a complete sentence. Immediately, A is gone. Okay, B, instead of the semicolon, we have a colon. Now, it's important to remember for colons that whatever precedes a colon has to sound like a complete sentence, right? What comes after the colon could be a complete sentence, but oftentimes it's usually like a noun or a list of nouns. But we've already established that before scientist is not a complete sentence, so therefore a colon cannot work either. Okay. C, we have a comma here, comma and. All right, I'm already kind of liking this because I know I can't put a punctuation that ends a complete sentence because I need to add more words. This would make a list. Yogurt manufacturers, food scientists, and government officials are also working together to keep additional solutions for reusing whey. I could probably circle this, I'm like 99% sure, but just for completion here, D, scientists and. You're almost never going to put a comma after an and unless you are inserting some descriptive but non-essential information. But government officials is an essential piece of the subject, so D cannot be it. So our final answer is for C. Okay. All right. Moving on, we get to number 5. Okay. So let's consider sentence 5 where it is. If we read sentence 4, it says they can add it to livestock as a protein supplement, and it can convert it into gas to use as fuel in electricity production. Okay. Now, sentence 5 says, if it is improperly introduced into the environment, acid runoff can pollute waterways. Now, already I'm thinking, wait a minute. Sentence 4 talks about good things to do with acid whey. And then we're immediately jumping into the bad things that acid whey runoff can do. There's no real build into from sentence 4 to sentence 5. So I'm not thinking that A is a really good choice. Okay? I think there's better. Let's consider putting sentence 5 after sentence 1. The main environmental problem caused by the production of Greek yogurt is the creation of acid whey as a byproduct. If it is improperly introduced into the environment, acid whey runoff can pollute waterways, depleting the oxygen content of streams and rivers as it decomposes. I like this transition because sentence 5 goes directly from building on the main environmental problem caused by the production of Greek yogurt and expands on what that problem is. Acid whey runoff can pollute waterways, depleting the oxygen content of streams and rivers, etc. Okay. But we can't stop there. We have to consider how the next sentence, sentence 2, builds off of sentence 5. Okay. Because it requires up to 4 times more milk to make than conventional yogurt does, Greek yogurt produces larger amounts of acid whey, which is difficult to dispose of. Now, this is a weird transition because sentence 5 already talked about acid whey runoff being introduced into the environment. By introducing this idea, it already implies that acid whey is difficult to dispose of. I don't think you'd want to say sentence 2 after sentence 5 because sentence 5 already says a lot more than sentence 2. Okay? Remember, we're talking about building off ideas, building off of details. 2 sort of repeats what 5 says and doesn't really add to it. So I'm not ready to eliminate it. I mean, it's good, but it doesn't feel perfect. I'm going to go ahead and actually put a soft yes on this. But I kind of want to hear how sentence 5 sounds after sentence 2. Okay. We already read sentence 2, right? Talking about how acid way is difficult to dispose of. But then if we go to sentence 5, if it is improperly introduced into the environment, acid way runoff can pollute waterways, depleting, right? Now, this does seem appropriate due to the logic that we said before. Right? You can talk about the main environmental problem caused by Greek yogurt, and that environmental problem, in this case, is that acid way is difficult to dispose of, and then if you improperly introduce it into environment, acid way runoff can pollute waterways and do all these other bad things. Okay, I can go with that. Now, how does sentence 3 feel after sentence 5? To address the problem of disposal, farmers have found a number of uses of acid way. That doesn't seem too bad either. Because now we are really clear about what that problem is to disposal. So I think it's marginally better. I think it's just enough. If I have to edge out, I would edge out C above B. So I'm going to cross out B. I'm going to give the new soft yes mantle to C. Now let's just check D. After sentence 3, well, sentence 3 already talks about the good things about acid way, so we don't want to go back to the bad. So D is out. We're going to go with 5C as our answer. But that's how you deal with sentence placement. You want to consider the connections, and you want to consider what ideas are being built off of. And this should go faster. It takes a lot of time to explain why these connections work or don't work. But when you do it on the test, you should be able to make these judgments a little bit more quickly. Okay. Moving on. Question 6. Though these conservation methods can be costly and time-consuming, they are well worth the effort. Okay, question 6 here. The writer is considering deleting the underlined sentence. Should the writer do this? Now, these answer choices are broken up into 2 parts, right? We can definitely tell that the question is whether we should keep the sentence or not. 2 of these answer choices say yes, 2 of them say no. But all of them are followed by a reason. What I would suggest is just focus on the reason initially. Okay? Let's not try to judge right now whether we should keep this sentence or not, because we might come up with a reason that isn't even mentioned at all by the SAT, and it can get us into trouble if we don't have a match in our reason. Okay? So let's just consider the different reasons that the SAT is presenting to us, starting with A. It does not provide a transition from the previous paragraph. Okay. Is that true? Now, already it says, though these conservation methods can be costly and time-consuming. Now here, these is actually a really good transition. These refers to something in the past. These conservation methods, which were mentioned up here. So, I think this is false. I think it does provide a transition from the previous paragraph. So I don't think it's A. Let's consider B. It fails to support the main argument of the passage as introduced in the first paragraph. Now, what was the main idea? Well, I already recall that the passage was talking about the benefits of Greek yogurt. They are well worth the effort. I mean, is this contradicting, or does it undermine this idea that Greek yogurt is good? I mean, I don't think so. So B's out. C, it continues the explanation of how acid way can be disposed of safely. Now, does it? It doesn't. It just describes that they're well worth the effort. We don't see any greater explanation of how acid way can be disposed of safely. Okay. For D, it sets up the argument in the paragraph for the benefits of Greek yogurt. Okay, this seems good, We can double check by just reading the next sentence. Nutritionists consider Greek yogurt to be a healthy food, is an excellent source of calcium and protein. That does seem to be the benefits of Greek yogurt. So this answer choice seems to be the only one that passes. So we're going to select D. All right, continuing. Nutritionists consider Greek yogurt to be a healthy food. It is an excellent source of calcium and protein, serves to be a digestive aid, and it contains a few calories in its unsweetened low and non-fat forms. Okay, there's a lot going on here. Starting with number 7. We see the words to be. Do I like the sound of that? It is an excellent sort of calcium protein, serves to be a digestive aid. Maybe. I'll give that a soft yes. Serves as a digestive aid? I like that, I think, a lot more. To be implies that it's the future, but we're talking about how it does now. And so I'm going to pass the mantle of a soft yes to as, crossing out A. Okay. C, serves like a digestive aid? No, it's not similar but not a digestive aid. It is a digestive aid. Okay. Serves for a digestive aid. Again, Greek yogurt is a digestive aid. I think this is clear. Answer choice is B. All right. 8. And it contains. Okay. I see that we have an underline here, and it's following the word and. Immediately, I think that this needs to be part of a list. So I want to look back at the sentence and see what are the other parts of the list that's being mentioned. Okay. So we're listing how Greek yogurt is a healthy food and the different considerations that make it a healthy food. So it is, 1, an excellent source of calcium protein. Okay. It is, oh, hold on a second, serves. So notice how this second part establishes what type of list this is. In this case, it's actually a list of verb phrases. So the start of the first phrase isn't an exclusive source, it actually is. It is an excellent source of calcium protein, it serves to be a digestive aid, and it. Ooh, I want to go straight to the verb here. I already know that 8A does not work. Okay? It containing, no. It contains, feels good. I think enough to circle it. Just double check. It will contain, no. It contains it right now. So 8C. So you saw how as soon as I saw that this was a list, I want to establish what kind of list this is. And the second term in this list establishes what the list is, in this case of verb phrases. So I needed a verb phrase to start off where question 8 is. Okay. Continuing. Greek yogurt is slightly lower in sugar and carbohydrates than conventional yogurt is. Also, because it is more concentrated, Greek yogurt contains slightly more protein per serving, thereby helping people stay satiated for longer periods of time. 9. I already like that also. These are both qualities that make Greek yogurt healthy food. Okay. B, in other words, actually, I should say that this is a soft yes. In other words, are we rephrasing the previous sentence? No, this is a completely different idea. Okay. Therefore, does being more concentrated and containing slightly more protein per serving, is this a cause of being slightly lower in sugar and carbohydrates? No. For instance, is this an example of an idea in the previous sentence? No, it's not an example of being slightly lower in sugar and carbohydrates. These are both descriptions. So I'm going with 9A. Okay. Satiated for longer periods of time. I already kind of know what satiated means. It means to be filling from a hunger sense, satisfying hunger. So I already feel like A is going to be correct. Fulfilled isn't really the same. When we're fulfilled, this is more referring to like an emotional fulfillment. We don't talk about our stomachs being fulfilled, though. So I don't like it better than A. Complacent doesn't really make sense. Sufficient, to be sufficient for a longer period of time, that doesn't make sense either. Sufficient for eliminating hunger, but that's what satiated means. So another vocab in context question, A. All right. Now, if you can sneak over and see that 11 has very short answer choices, we don't need to read in the middle. We can just go straight to the sentence in 11, although we do want to start at the beginning of the sentence. Because consumers reap the nutritional benefits of Greek yogurt and support those who make and sell it, therefore farmers and businesses should... So because is already here, I'm expecting the start of a complete sentence. So I want a subject here directly. This does not feel good. I need a subject here. Okay. Farmers and businesses should continue finding safe and effective methods for producing the food. Okay, I like this a lot better. I'm gonna give this a soft yes. So farmers, already it violates what I wanted to see before. For D, I see a colon, but I know what's before the colon is not a complete sentence, so it's not D. Answer choices is B. Let's check some answer choices, see if it works. All right, let's test to see if all of our answer choices are correctamundo. Scrolling up. 1D, 2B, 3A, 4C, 5C, ooh, that was a close one, 6D, 7B, 8C, 9A, and 10A. So we got them all right. We got them all right. Woo! Smiley face. So what is it that I want us to get out of SAT writing? I want us to understand that most of these questions will go by very quickly. Admittedly, I took a very long time to answer these questions, but that's because the explanations take a while. But really, as you read, again, if you are a native speaker, you can already sense what answer choices sound correct and what don't. That will work very often when you are attempting a question that doesn't have any other question statement in them. You can just basically sound your way into a correct answer. Well, you need to think a little bit for transitions and occasionally like verb conjugation questions where you're far away from the subject. Yes, you will. And we might run into those questions if I do another of these SAT writing exercises. But you should be able to go through grammar questions fairly quickly. It's the writing style questions where you really need to be adept on the idea of a sentence building off of a previous sentence. So you saw how we tackled questions like number 5, considering how one sentence builds off of another and how the next sentence builds off of the sentence that we are inserting. Okay. We saw question number 2, where we used the context from the previous sentence to essentially provide the boundaries by which we are going to be judging answer choices, right? So relevant detail. What makes a relevant detail? Well, it should make a sentence name a number of uses of acid whey. We saw that in question 6, that we can just consider the reasons and not necessarily answer the question directly. And just ask, does the underlined sentence fit the reason that's mentioned? And if you just follow that, then the answer to the question sort of answers itself.
Thank you so much for watching. Now, if you like what you saw, please click the thumbs up button below. Also, if you want to watch more of my videos, or you want to catch me on an office hours live stream, please click subscribe to Sophos Tutor.